I'm Jen from That Mama Book Nook, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be following up on the 2024 Goodreads Choice Awards nominees for historical fiction. The results are well out there by now, but in December I had highlighted all of the 20 nominees in that category. I gave the synopsis for each of them. I gave my predictions on whether they were going to be nominated and if those predictions were correct. I also talked a little bit about the ones that I had predicted would be nominated and were not, or there were a few that also were put in a different category, not in historical fiction, even if they had a historical fiction component. So today I'm going to follow up. I'm going to briefly talk about the top 10 and the winner, and really the real point about why I'm following up now is I also had my Instagram followers and friends vote on one of the top 20 books for me to read and vlog about. So I'm excited to share which book they picked and start reading it. I'm really excited. This is my first vlog. I am looking forward to doing a lot more different types of videos. I do a lot of TBR videos because that's just an easy, organized thought video, but I really want to try to branch out and do some other fun ones, so I'm excited to see how this goes. Also, just going back again to the Goodreads Choice Awards, I am not going to be talking about all the synopses again because I talked about all of them in that video, so I will make sure to link that one either down below here, both of them, see if I can figure it out. So feel free to check that one out if you're curious about any of these. So Goodreads Choice Awards has 2 rounds of voting. They put out 20 nominees and then there's a first round of voting. So after the first round of voting, they narrow it down to the top 10. The top 10 books in the historical fiction category were The Women by Kristen Hanna, James by Percival Everett, The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon, The Book Lovers Library by Madeline Martin, The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali, By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult, The Briar Club by Kate Quinn, Husbands and Lovers by Beatrice Williams, The Seventh Veil of Salome by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and Anita Demonte Laughs Last by Xochitl Gonzalez. If you go and watch my other video, I also predicted that The Women by Kristen Hanna would be the winner of the Goodreads Choice Awards in historical fiction in 2024, and I was correct with 253,147 votes after all the voting was said and done. I also correctly predicted that James would be the second place, so to speak, and that one had 62,431 votes. I didn't predict the places of any of the other books, but the top 10 that I listed actually was the order that they were placed in the top 10. Out of the top 20 books, I had read 2 of them. I had read The Women by Kristen Hanna, and I had also read Behind Every Good Man by Sarah Goodman Confino. That one didn't make it to the top 10, but they were both 5-star reads for me, so I highly recommend. Many of the other ones in those top 20 were on my TBR though, even though I hadn't read a whole ton of them. Then, as I mentioned, while the Goodreads Choice Awards voting was going on, I had my Instagram followers and friends vote on which book out of the 18 that I hadn't read, which one I should do for a vlog. So I thought I would share how the results actually went. In my first round of voting, I just randomly put books up against each other. I didn't look at any sort of statistics. I just threw them up on a quick little poll on Instagram stories, and after the 24 hours of stories was up, I went to the next round. So the first round was The Book Lovers Library versus The Seventh Veil of Salome, and The Book Lovers Library won with 75% of the vote. Then it was The Lion Women of Tehran versus The Frozen River, and The Frozen River won with 73% of the vote. Then Anita Demonte Laughs Last versus The Love Elixir of Augustus Stern. The Love Elixir of Augustus Stern won with 86% of the vote. Then The Paris Novel versus The Phoenix Crown. This was a closer one, with The Phoenix Crown winning 55% of the vote. Then Husbands and Lovers versus Shelterwood. Husbands and Lovers won with 75% of the vote. There Are Rivers in the Sky versus The Great Divide. The Great Divide won with 61% of the votes. By Any Other Name versus The Storm We Made. By Any Other Name won with 63% of the votes. The Briar Club versus Long Island. The Briar Club won with 86% of the votes. And lastly, James versus The Bullet Swallower. James won with 62% of the votes. So I narrowed down the top 20 to 18 after I took out the two I'd read, down to the final 9 after the first round of voting. I also should say that I encouraged the people voting to vote whatever way they wanted. Vote for the one with the interesting cover, vote for the one that you've read and loved, vote for the one that you read and hated and you just want to get my reaction on it. So anything goes. I was up for reading any of them. So then, similarly with the second round of voting, I didn't pair them up any special way. I literally just went down the line, and winner of the first poll with the winner of the second poll, and kept going like that. So then it was The Book Lovers Library versus The Frozen River. The Frozen River won with 61% of the votes. The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern versus The Phoenix Crown. The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern won by 1 vote, or 53% of the votes. Husbands and Lovers versus The Great Divide. Husbands and Lovers also won only by 1 vote and 53% of the votes. And then, because I didn't have an even number, I did the last 3 books in a 3-way poll. By Any Other Name won with 40% of the votes, also only by 1 vote. That last one was a really hard choice. The Briar Club and James also seemed like fantastic picks. So then we were down to the semifinals. Same strategy. The Frozen River versus The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern. The Frozen River won by a landslide with 93% of the votes. And then Husbands and Lovers versus By Any Other Name, with By Any Other Name winning 60% of the votes. So the last day of voting then came down to The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon versus By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult. 2 books, very highly anticipated for me. I think I would love them both, but the final result was The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. This one with 68% of the votes. And if you noticed when I read the list of the top 10, this actually ended up coming in 3rd for the Goodreads Choice Awards in Historical Fiction. And let me tell you, I had people in my DMs very passionate about them wanting me to read this book. First of all, just them personally loving it, but also thinking that I would really love this book as well. And I had chosen this already as my book of the month pick from whatever time this was a choice, and have had it on my shelf. So this is one that clearly was interesting to me and I have been wanting to read. I will recap the synopsis for this one, even though I did it in the previous video, just to tie it all in. This takes place in Maine in 1789, where a man is found frozen dead in the Kennebec River. Martha Ballard is the local midwife, but she's also kind of the main medical provider in this area, is called to examine the body and determine cause of death. Martha Ballard also happens to keep a diary of every birth, death, crime, debacle that unfolds in this close-knit town. Months earlier, Martha had documented the details of an alleged rape committed by 2 of the town's most respected gentlemen, one of whom has now been found dead in the ice. Martha feels this death is not an accident, but a local physician who was clearly hired to step in undermines her conclusion and does rule that the death is an accident. So then Martha is forced to investigate this shocking murder on her own terms. I'm so excited to finally have an opportunity to read this. One thing I noticed was that it is one of the oldest books on the Goodreads Choice Awards for historical fiction in 2024. All of them have been published within a certain window, but I do find that some of the ones published more in the middle are more likely to be nominated. They're just fresh enough on people's mind, but enough people have had a chance to read them. Some of the ones closer to the end, just not enough people had that chance, and some of the ones from a while ago that have been published for, towards the beginning of the publishing period, people just aren't still thinking about. So I feel like that really says something about this book, that people were still thinking about it and talking about it enough that it still got nominated, even though it was from the very early period of the window. I also think I have literally heard nothing bad about this book, and I am overdue for a great historical fiction read. Let's get started. a third of the book. Actually, I'm probably more like close to halfway through, but I wanted to stop and share my thoughts at the 1/3 mark. So that's what I'm gonna do. Really enjoying it so far. I said at the end of my intro that I am overdue for a great historical fiction read, and I feel like I am already going to get that feeling from this book, even just this far through. So yay! The stage is set late 1700s Maine. I'm a New England girl, so it's always fun to read about places that are like not super far away. It's fun to read about places that are really far away too, but you know what I mean. I also love that the main character is a midwife. My background is in medicine, a different aspect of medicine, but still I really enjoy reading novels that have medical aspects to them, especially when they are really well researched. And it's also like an extra level of fun to read like a historical medical to see, you know, how they did things back then. No spoilers in this vlog, but just a little bit more specifics than what is in the front cover, but basically the same idea. Midwife Martha Ballard is woken up in the middle of the night when a body is found frozen in the Kennebec River. The man is frozen, but he also has pretty significant injuries. Soon he's identified as Joshua Burgess, who is one of two men that has been accused of raping a woman named Rebecca Foster fairly recently. The other man accused is Colonel North. Colonel North has a pretty high position in town, not only just as a white male in the late 1700s, but he's also a judge. Anyway, Martha inspects the body and she determines that Joshua Burgess has been beaten, hanged, and then thrown in the river. But then a man named Dr. Benjamin Page, who Martha has never met before, shows up, presumably sent by Colonel North to rule the death an accident instead of a murder. When Martha goes home, we meet her husband and her 6 living children, all who kind of were involved with this man's death in some way. I haven't really figured out all the details. He was hitting on one of the daughters, one of the brothers came to defense, multiple of the children were there to witness, but everyone is saying, like, he was alive when we left him. We're also introduced to Martha Ballard's journal. She writes simple things like the weather and, you know, births and deaths in the town, but also does a quick little entry about what is going on. As I said, I don't want to spoil things, but Martha Ballard is called to various levels of court multiple times regarding multiple different cases. Sometimes she's just going there to as a townsperson to observe, sometimes she is being called to as a witness, but there are multiple instances where she is attending court, and there are times when it is really frustrating to be a woman during this time. Colonel North as a judge is certainly trying to manipulate things, but then there are also some really great kind of like mic drop moments where Martha throws down and says, "Two can play at this game, you're not getting off that easy." Meanwhile, occasionally we're getting some flashbacks of her life when she was just getting married, just starting to have children. I'm really enjoying the plot of both this murder investigation and also her life. They don't always intersect. They seem like they are running a little bit. They're obviously not like parallel because one's from the past and one's the present, but it definitely seems like they are going to, there is some build up, some background is coming to like us learning more information, but also it is just setting the time period, the historical elements, like her position as a midwife and everything that she does for the town and for the people of that town. Anyway, I am reading multiple books right now, as always, but whenever this one comes up in my my rotation, I am always really excited to pick it up, which is always a great sign of a great read. I will check that in when maybe I've read about like 2/3, and we should definitely get a good sense of how I'm feeling about it. Okay, I am 2/3 of the way through The Frozen River now. I actually got emotional a little ways into this section of the book, probably a little like about the halfway mark, which surprised me. I am not someone who gets teary a lot with books. Yeah, I mean, again, I think that I'm going to rate this very high, but usually books that make me cry are like 5 stars. And this one, don't get me wrong, this one didn't make me sob at this point, but I did definitely have that like emotional feelings, eyes welled up a little bit. And it was at the part where, not a spoiler, the owner of the store was talking and he said, "I know you think that half the town has turned against you, Martha, what with all the trouble you've had, but there are just as many who will not hear an ill word against you. Mr. Sewell counts himself in that number, and so do I." Mr. Sewell is the husband of a woman that Martha saved during childbirth when the other physician who was called to attend the birth did something that today would have been considered malpractice 100%. So Mr. Sewell added money to her account at the store and set aside some chocolates and tea, which can be hard to come by. Again, small acts like that during books don't often get me, but I just feel like we are in it so deep with Martha right now, and that feeling of loneliness while still trying to do what is right, and then for her to be acknowledged for that, it just got me. And I think it hit me because even like what the world is like today, I'm not gonna get into politics and everything, but just, yeah, it felt heavier than I think maybe if I had read it at a different time. So yeah, I will be shocked if this does not end up being a 5-star read. In general, from this last section, I read still so many shocking moments, good and bad. Check your triggers, always, but still, definitely I would still check them for this book. I'm also still loving the nursing and medicine pieces in this book from this time period. So interesting how different diseases are learned about and treated, how Martha became a midwife, all of it. I love it. And the same way that I'm loving the history woven in, I'm also loving the side characters. Doctor is a fascinating character, not to be confused with Dr. Page, who is the physician. Ephraim, her husband, Cyrus, her son, who is mute, some of her other children, Percy the falcon, Brutus the horse. Even the animals, while very minor characters, are given their own personalities truly, and they are just coming alive through Ariel Lawhon's writing. I can't wait to see how this book ends, which will be the next time I check in. I finished it. I wanted to do a little bit more B-roll, but it didn't happen, mostly because yep, 5 stars. Wow, I loved this book. I loved the plot. I loved the characters. I loved the historical piece and the medicine. The medicine was fascinating and devastating. Like, how far we've come. They talk about diphtheria multiple times throughout the book, not a main plot point / spoiler, and oh my gosh, how much we take antibiotics and vaccines for granted these days. Although, fun fact, diphtheria was not named diphtheria until 1826. This book takes place in the late 1700s and does call it by its name, diphtheria. That being said, I don't hold the author for any misuse because my guess is that was to make it very clear to the reader what they were dealing with. And there was a major diphtheria outbreak in New England during this time. They just didn't call it by that name. Another medicine piece, they had a character who suffered from, I'm pretty sure, from migraines, and Martha Ballard gives her a tonic. I'm not sure exactly what that tonic actually is, but so limited of medicinal options during this time period. Overall, I really loved learning about Martha Ballard so much. At one point, she discusses how she keeps that daily log out of habit, but also as a record that she existed in the world, despite not having done anything remarkable. Her words, not mine. Like, this is the literal mark that she will leave in the world, is her journal. So different from now, but also so interesting to hear her thoughts about that, that basically if you didn't write down your own history, it would be forgotten over generations. Like, maybe there would be some stories that you would tell, but the written word was so, so important. And that ending, no spoilers, but wow. Definitely don't miss Ariel Lawhon's author's note at the end. Do not read it before you finish. She does give major warnings about that, but the author goes through so much interesting information about Martha Ballard, as well as what was true and what was fictional in the book. So fascinating. Thank you to all my friends on Instagram who voted in my Goodreads polls for me to read this book. I can definitely tell why it was a Goodreads Choice Awards nominee and made it to the 3rd place spot. So that's it for this vlog. Let me know in the comments if you've read this book and what you think of this style of video. I hope to do more one-off reviews and reading blogs and fun ways to pick books that I read, especially if you all like these. And if you're not feeling super chatty, but you just want to let me know that you were here, go ahead and leave an ice cube emoji for the frozen river, and I will see you on my next video. Bye!